Welcome, everyone, to the L7C Podcast. Today, we have a very special episode for you guys. Finally, the most requested person to be on the L7C Podcast, Chelsea Heppert, is here with us today. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. As I previously stated, you have been by far and away the most requested person that Mitch and Cedric and Byron and anyone else who's listened to the L7C podcast has wanted to be on. So first, how does that make you feel being so requested?
Very nervous.
Why are you nervous?
I don't know why they want to hear me talk.
They want to hear you talk. You have very interesting opinions on a whole bunch of things. So before we get into today's topic, Chelsea, why don't you just tell the audience who you are and...
So I'm Chelsea. I'm obviously a friend of Martin's and Cedric's. I don't know. Like,
what do you do?
I work at the zoo. I have 2 cats. We're living in a pandemic, so I'm not doing a whole lot. Just binge Criminal Minds.
Oh,
that's where we're at.
Very well, very well. But there's one thing that you really do love, and that is one Britney Spears. So, Chelsea, what got you into Britney Spears?
I think she was one of the first, pop stars that I actually knew existed in the world. Like, there's a picture of me, as a child, just holding up one of her first albums and just, smiling from ear to ear. I had, the Britney Spears Barbie doll. I had posters of her everywhere. She just really, I grew up with her. And she instilled a lot of confidence. And I remember, performing little shows for my mom and her friends and embarrassing myself as a kid. So yeah, she's great. I love her.
Yeah, she's definitely one of the biggest icons, not just in music, but of all time, especially in our lifetime. And that is the topic of this episode because the documentary heard around the world, the Framing Britney Spears documentary that's now streaming on Hulu and is on FX, just came out recently, and that opened a whole bunch of eyeballs onto Britney Spears from the beginning of her career to the mental breakdowns to where we're at now. And first off, Chelsea, I know you saw the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
What were your initial thoughts about the doc?
Before I watched it, was a little nervous because I have seen other documentaries that she's done, and they're not necessarily portrayed in the best lights because they're more focused in the middle of her breakdown, the middle of 2007, what that was for her.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was from MTV, and they were part of the problem at the time as well. So I was a little hesitant, but the more I watched it, the more comfortable I felt with it because it was, for the most part, an all-female cast and crew who was documenting this. And they really focused more so on the people around Britney and why everything happened rather than Britney herself, if that makes sense. It wasn't a personal attack. It was, why were these things happening? Why was this okay to happen? And why is this happening to an adult woman?
Yeah, definitely. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the documentary and some of the important points. We're going to split up into 3 parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end. This was also made by the New York Times, and like you said, all-female director, all that 9 yards. And they reached out to a whole bunch of people who were with Britney at the beginning and are working on the case now. So let's just start in the beginning. The beginning of the documentary was how usually beginnings start, where she was born, how she got into the music industry, the Mickey Mouse Club, all of that stuff. And I think the beginning really set the tone because it was when she had one of her first performances, the older guy who I guess was the MC of the thing.
The first thing he asked her was, do you have a boyfriend? And she's maybe, 11
to 11 yep.
years old. First thing, do you have a boyfriend? Or have you had your first kiss yet? And would you date me? A grown 70, 80-year-old man asking these things. But nothing towards the boy. And we don't see the whole clip, but that's one of the main focuses. Not, oh, you did really well there. Like, how did you get into singing so young? Do you have a boyfriend?
Yeah, and when the movie started, like, the documentary, when it started like that, I knew the tone where this was going to go, because for that being his first question and not praising her on the performance, and then when she said she doesn't have one, and then him saying, what about me, where...
And she was visibly uncomfortable, too. Like, the moment he asked that first question, she recoiled. Like, she just, like, snapped.
Yeah.
Like, that's so uncomfortable for a kid to go through.
Absolutely. And then going forward with that, too, you start to see, just fast forwarding now, because if she had both her parents. So if you're her parents and you're seeing a 78-year-old asking your 10 to 11-year-old if you have a boyfriend, I would think you would step in and be like, hey, don't talk to my daughter like that. We didn't, obviously, you just said it was a clip, so we didn't see that. And the other big part at the beginning, too, is that the father, Jamie,
he's not around.
He wasn't around at all. And I believe it was one of Britney's PR or publicists, whoever was talking, saying that the only thing she heard Jamie talk about was, my daughter's going to be so rich one day, she's going to buy me a boat. And that...
If that's not indicative of the kind of parent he is,
yeah,
I don't know what is. Not, oh, I'm so proud of her. I love her. She'll go far in life.
Yeah.
No, she'll buy me a boat.
With also, because the mom, Lynn, was the one doing all the stuff and making ends meet and trying to make things work, which, fun fact, I didn't know until 2021 that Jamie Lynn was named, putting her parents' name together.
Oh.
Didn't know that until the movie. I was like, oh. Jamie Lynn Spears. I was just like, okay. So then you go from that cringeworthy thing and then the dad to the career, how she's performing in the malls, and then people are starting to pay attention to her. She's starting to really grow, and then her first single comes out, instantly #1. Right.
Video, iconic. Like, people are still dressing up as her in 2021. People will always dress up as her in that music video. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of backlash with that because of how sexualized it was when she did that video, because she was a teenager at the time. But what a lot of people don't really realize is that she was the one who decided to wear that outfit. She was the one who put herself into the driver's seat and was like, we're going to form it like this. I'm going to dress like this. Like, this is the look that I'm going for. And it was super successful.
Yeah.
Insanely successful. And it, like, honestly isn't that raunchy. I guess for the time, it's, like, provocative, but, like, the schoolgirl outfit itself isn't that bad.
No, it's not. And now if you fast forward to 2021, and obviously they didn't have things like TikTok or Twitter or Instagram and all that stuff back then, or OnlyFans of things like that nature. Now people wear the schoolgirl, like you said, the Britney outfit, and they make money off of that, dressing as her from all the way back then. So she has her first single, the first video, shoots up to #1. She's an instant star like that. Everyone's going to her concerts. Apparently now she has the money to buy the boat that her dad wanted.
Oh no, he can buy the boat.
He can buy the boat.
She can't make that decision.
Yeah, because she's 16. That is true. And then you just brought up how other people had issues with that, about her being sexualized and all that. But you said that she made those choices because she was the one who made those choices. But back then, I felt like she handled it very well from the documentary. I mean, she was at 16, you're going to all these different places and performing. You used to perform in malls. Now you're performing on TRL at the time, and we definitely don't have that anymore. And when MTV was all about the music videos, and your music videos on every 3 videos, she became an instant star. Like, it was mind-boggling how big she got, and for her first song and video to skyrocket like that was just amazing. And then obviously we were younger at the time of her powers, and you just like don't realize how much pressure she was on, because you had all these people looking up to her.
Mm-hmm.
Like all these women singing the lyrics and going to the concerts. But then on the dark side of that, you had the moms who, I remember one quote from the movie that
from the governor's wife,
that she would shoot her.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you just openly say that you would shoot Britney Spears if you saw her because of her image?
Because of her image and because she's not a good role model. And Britney's response to that was, I'm not the babysitter. Like, that's horrible. And it's disgusting to think about, like, a grown woman threatening a teenager. I was actually talking to my mom about that, and my mom remembered when that came, like, out and, like, when that was big news. It's just mind-blowing that was a thing. And the worst part about that is that still goes on today, with not in the sense of threatening people's lives, because jail and obviously, but in the sense that parents are disgusted by younger singers, younger influencers for dressing provocatively and saying that they're not good role models. And it ultimately falls on the parent to be a good role model. Like, that person is not raising your kid, you are. Like, if you want to sexualize that individual, you can, but you can also teach your kids about body confidence and control and expressing themselves in a safe manner. So it's just an interesting takeaway.
You're absolutely right on that. I do remember how then when that movie, the music video came out, there were the people who were like, oh, Britney's just this all shucks girl, things of that nature.
All American sweetheart.
Yeah, to then Britney is now this sex symbol, imagery of her. And then another crazy quote I remember from this doc was Jay Leno on his night show, which was very popular back in the day. Some people only know him for having the cars in his garage. But he said, when you're talking about the dual personalities of Britney Spears, do you want that girl, the schoolgirl who you could take home to your mom and introduce, or do you want the slut who puts out all the time? And you guys know who you're picking the slut. And just hearing that on the documentary, I was just like, oh my gosh, this was okay. And I was like, we're talking about like that time 16 to like 18-year-old girl. We're just saying, do you want schoolgirl Britney or do you want slut Britney? Like that was wild to me. That was another major quote that's just stuck in my head since watching that doc. When you saw that, what did you think?
I was blown away. I can't imagine being slut shamed at that young of an age on that big of a platform in front of millions of people, knowing that you have all these pressures to be a good role model, but you're also learning who you are. You're learning about your sexuality, about like being a woman and starting to take those baby steps. Like, I can't imagine just going through that like on such a public scale. And Miley Cyrus just went through that a few years ago, and people are still taken aback by like how she was treated. That was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're rewinding all the way to Britney and how badly she got it. Like, that's insane.
So then going from that in our analysis of the first part, you have her and Justin Timberlake getting together. And at that point in time, it's just like probably one of the biggest relationships of our young lives.
I mean, the denim on denim, the denim tuxedos, iconic. Katy Perry just recreated that look a few years ago. Like, it's still.
So you had those two together, and while they're together, I forgot which reporter was even asking about Britney's virginity.
Correct.
And again, this is just wild that this was just openly okay. Like, so are you still a virgin and things like that? And I'm just sitting here watching the documents like, who is allowing these questions? Like, those questions were wild, especially them being publicly aired to everyone to see. So,
and also, like, none of that was really focused on Justin.
No.
Like, his sex life doesn't matter, but if you're a female, it absolutely matters, because if you are a virgin, you're still wholesome. You're still okay for little kids to watch. Like, parents aren't gonna actually murder you. They'll just threaten to shoot you. But if you have sex before you're married, heaven forbid, you're a slut. You're ruined. You're a bad influence. You're going to influence other people to have sex. Like, it's such a double standard.
Yeah, and it even went further, too, from that they were talking. They were also asking about her breast and if she's had work done during this as well. So you're asking if she's a virgin, but then you're also asking if she's had her breasts done, and which both are asked on a public scale, which is no one's really business but her own. But it's the fact that these were getting asked, and then this was being reported as real news. Correct. On news stations, like, oh, Britney Spears says she's still a virgin and she hasn't had any work done on her breasts and things of that nature. And the fact that her life was just out there at this early point in the time with no social media, no nothing, and her life was out there is just wild. And then you also had her when she performed at the VMAs back then with her, Christina Aguilera, and Madonna, the kiss, which people were just like.
And I'm pretty sure that happened right around when her and Justin broke up, because there's like a shot in that performance where they just zoom in on Justin's face as she's kissing Madonna or Christina, and then Neil Patrick Harris is fangirling in like the background, and that part's adorable. But yeah, that was such a culture shock. Christina didn't really get any heat from it, but she also wasn't as big of a star back then as Britney was.
No, she wasn't, but if you put it down, like, they would be each other's main rival, per se, so I really would be interested to see how Christina, what the media was around her back then, but she's not in the situation that Britney's in now, so she might not ever get that documentary. And like you said, it was a culture shock, because this is back then where having any sort of like homosexuality, like anything gay, was not okay. Period. So even if you were both heterosexual and you shared a kiss with your friend or something like that, but if that was seen on TV for the world to see, then you had all those anti-gay groups and like get them off the TV, this and that. And
especially with Madonna, because she already was so provocative for like her time as well, like a virgin and all of the music videos and just her being Madonna.
Yeah.
Like,
so then they break up, Justin and Britney, and we're going to talk about Justin more. But just for this part one synopsis, they break up. He goes on the radio, and the guy just blatantly asks him, "So, did you have sex with Britney Spears?" And then he tries to deflect for a little bit, but then he asks again, and then Justin's like, "Oh, yeah, I did." And then there was the whole high fives and all that. But then on the flip side, Britney went back on her word, waiting. She said she was going to wait till marriage, but Justin Timberlake just said that they had sex. So now she's a slut and a liar. And then she's just getting blasted by everyone in every corner. And if I do remember, it was 2003 when she had the interview with Diane Sawyer.
Yeah.
And that interview, I thought the first ones were bad. That one was bad.
I can't imagine being asked about my sex life and having that being covered as real news and being shamed about it.
Yeah, and it was not like it was someone on Twitter just going in her DMs or comments where you can block. This was Diane freaking Sawyer. So, like, one of
a reporter of our time.
Yeah. She was asking in 2003 about, like, sexuality, and then the underwear was brought up, and, like, all of that. And then she starts crying. She needs a minute, and Diane really doesn't care.
She doesn't think about what kind of pressure she's putting on a young woman. And she doesn't, and other young women, because people are going to watch that. Like, it's going to be on every single tabloid. If you're in the grocery store, you're going to see that headline: Britney Spears no longer a virgin. She wears underwear to perform. Like, just knowing that those were the types of questions that were being asked of a pop star of that huge of nature and who is extremely talented, like, that's all they could glean from her person, is ridiculous.
And then with that too, also you had JT made his song, or it's what we call now diss track, about about Britney Spears, and that was hailed as a song.
Used her likeness in the music video for it.
So everyone knew
what was going on.
And she didn't respond with her own video or anything like that. And that's really how the first, 30 minutes of that documentary go, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it can't get any worse for how she's been treated. And then you get to the Kevin Federline saga, where she meets Kevin.
They fall in love. He was a backup dancer. They met on tour. Whirlwind romance, because she's got to make up for lost time. She couldn't date.
Nope.
She was viewed as a slut, so if any guy treats her right, of course she's going to date him. He was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And they get married. They're obviously very young. And it's also very exploited by the media, because the media has a field day. They just stalk them every single moment of every single day. But Kevin also had previous relationships. He has other kids where those relationships did not end very well. He owed child support at one time. He wasn't involved, really. And then him and Britney get married. Vegas, I believe. I want to say it was Vegas.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks it's the American dream. Britney's finally settled down. She'll calm down. She won't perform in her underwear anymore. And then she is pregnant with her first child.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think the paparazzi really got involved in a more serious manner. And serious being the stalking and such extremisms for it.
Yeah, so the first big thing I remember when she had her child in the documentary was the driving car seat fiasco.
Yes, with the baby in her lap.
Britney drove from point A to point B with the baby in her lap. Everyone caught that. And then this wasn't just on, again, tabloids. This was on CNN.
Yes.
I want to preface for everyone listening that all of Britney Spears' actions were on CNN, NBC, all of those things.
Washington Journal, everything.
So, yeah, and even at that point in time, too, remember that we're still, at war with Iraq at this time. And you would have the war in Iraq news and Britney Spears news going back and forth, which is mind-boggling that we're in a war and Britney Spears driving to point A to point B with their child in her lap is news 1A, 1B with the war in Iraq. And Britney explained that, she said her dad's done it before.
But if you also take a step back and look at the picture, look at how many people are surrounding her and her car. And if you are a new mother, that's your child, you need to get out of the situation. You would absolutely try to get out of there as fast as possible.
And that's what she said.
So, yeah, I don't think she's a horrible person for doing that. I don't think she should have been as villainized as what she was during that time, because safety. People get grabbed all the time from paparazzi. Gigi Hadid a few years ago was literally picked up by some paparazzi psycho fan, and her security guards had to grab her to save her. Those were the times that she was living in.
Yeah, so then we go from there, and then that's all on the news. And then she has another child with Kevin Federline. Yeah. And then we start to, she wanted a haircut.
So they start to break up.
Yeah.
Things get really bad. Her image at this point is considered tarnished by everyone involved. So she is constantly being told to do these appearances and trying to be the good girl. And people are obviously constantly doing her makeup, doing her hair. And so one night she had enough, and so she shaved it off. Her reason for that is she's taking back control. If people can't touch her anymore, then she's in control.
Yep.
She can't be their Barbie anymore. She can't be put up on this pedestal because they have nothing to do with her. So she shaves her hair, and it's a culture shock. It was on the front page.
It was the biggest news of that time, of that week, of that month, shaving her head.
It was everywhere. Everywhere you looked, it was Britney Spears shaves her head off, so she's obviously crazy. And so the paparazzi took it a step further, and they're still following her around. They're stalking her property. They're stalking her younger sister all the time just to get a headline. There was one article, too, this wasn't in the documentary, where Britney Spears and one of her friends went for a swim, and it was very spontaneous, but they swam in their underwear, and people were so offended. But, like, her underwear was the same equivalent as a bathing suit. Yeah. And it was around, like, the same time frame. But the paparazzi were just getting this high from all of her actions, and she was trying to take back control. And they weren't just leaving her alone. And at one point, she did ask them to stop, and this is when she hit the car with the umbrella. Yeah. And again, you're young, you're being followed by adult men. Nighttime, you're at a gas station, and they won't listen to you. So she took matters into her own hands.
Yeah, at that point in 2008,
somewhere in that time frame.
She wasn't even like, she's in her 40s now, but she wasn't that back then. She's 26 at this point in time, so she's right now around our age, a little bit younger. And to think that someone's gone through all of this by the age of 26 is crazy. And then once she hit that guy's car and then got in the car and left, you had news outlets asking if she's fit to take care of her kids. So then you have that. She checks in to the to rehab twice willingly.
Yes.
Willingly. And then you have Kevin Federline filing for full custody of the two kids.
Yes.
And they showed there was a part in there where Britney was trying to see her kids, and
he wouldn't let
her. And then that led to her down the road only having like visitation with her
and
kid.
All of this pressure and everything obviously bottles up, and she does have a breakdown. So she does go back to rehab. And this is when Jamie Spears gets involved. And
he comes. You don't see him since the beginning of the doc. And he comes walking in. They have the camera on him. 08 to 09. Dad finally comes out of the woodworks.
The hero. He is Jamie Spears, here to save his daughter from all of this chaos. And that's when the conservatorship steps in. And she loses control.
Do you want to tell everyone what conservatorship is? No? Basically, I got you. So, basically, her dad was in charge of who she can see, where she can go, how her finances are used. Basically, life planner. Like, he has full control of her life. And this was in 2008 when it first got established.
And conservatorships, like, they're also primarily used on elderly people who cannot make those decisions anymore. So, like, this is pretty unprecedented, like, for a 26-year-old to go through. A 26-year-old who is wildly successful to be put under as well. So to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it was only supposed to be temporary until she got under control. And it's crazy, too, where when I was talking to someone else about this, Britney almost had, like, 2 whole careers. You had the Hit Me Baby One More Time and the Kevin Federline stuff. It got cut there. Then she had her new career where she reinvented herself. You had Toxic come out. You had Till the World Ends. Now you have the iconic line, It's Britney, bitch. Like, you have all of those things. Like, she literally reinvented herself once she came out. And she's back #1 on the chart. She's going everywhere.
I mean, she had an album in 2007, Blackout, literally during the time of all this, less than a year later. And then she had another one, Circus, 2008.
And she's out there. And
immediately.
And then the biggest thing, too, is when she had her residency in Las Vegas.
It was amazing. I cried. I knew every single word. There's a video of my mom filming me of me crying while singing and dancing.
So she had that, but it's crazy because this conservatorship was from 2008 and it was only supposed to be temporary. Here we are before 2019, so 10 years, and it keeps getting extended.
Correct. And her dad is primarily in control of everything, including her finances, which is an interesting choice because at one point in his life, he did file for bankruptcy. Just to remind everyone about that. And he is in control of every single business decision, every single concert, every single music video, and all of the appearances. I mean, if you look at the VMAs when she came back and she was in that silver dress and she looked so happy and she won a bunch of awards, that was a year later. A year later of just showing how much she went through and how much work she did for herself to get herself to that point, because your mental health is very important, and no one who isn't mentally sound would be able to get up on those stages and do those performances and be able to make successful albums. And Blackout is one of my favorite albums from her. Like, it's very ahead of its time, and for her to be able to do all of that while supposedly not being able to take care of herself, her kids, her finances, is insane.
So we flash forward to part 3, which is current times, and avid fans like you have been questioning this conservatorship for a while now, and now it's starting to get a little attention, and people are like, why is this 40-year-old still being treated like she's 11, like that 11-year-old girl from the beginning of the doc, that her dad is in control of everything, and why does the judge and then keep extending this, and now you have the Free Britney movement, and now the hearings are becoming public, so people are going and listening to them, and it's just crazy that this icon, who all that she's gone through, she has her kids, like, and she still can't make decisions on her own money or where to go and what to really do.
And also creatively, like she can't make her own decisions about her albums. And Glory, the album cover, like, it wasn't supposed to be the original cover. That's just a screenshot, and it's not the best. But then recently, like this past year, she released what was supposed to be the cover of that album when she released 2 surprise bonus tracks off of that. So it's interesting to me that she can't make those decisions either. Like,
and then you have the two sides. Now you have her lawyers fighting to end this, and then you have the dad's lawyers to extend this. You had one of the lawyers who was on the case, who's working on the dad's side, saying, "Oh, I've never seen anyone
be this successful. Like, this is such a great business model." And he kept referring to it as a business model, but it's not. It's someone's life.
And the biggest thing, too, with that, too, that you have these two sides going against each other, and Britney Spears is paying for both sides.
Yeah.
She's paying, obviously, her attorney and all of that stuff, but her dad is using her money to pay for his attorney, so you have two sides getting paid by the same person, which, that in itself is crazy.
And Jamie is also, at this point, has a restraining order from Britney Spears' kids. Like, he is not allowed to see them. So this man, who has a restraining order, who has filed for bankruptcy, who is not involved in her childhood whatsoever, comes in and is this almighty father figure, and he still has control over everything.
Yeah, so I have a restraining order against my grandkid, that's fine.
I still have control over my daughter.
Yeah, your mom's not getting you anything for Christmas because I'm not allowing it. So those things are wild. So before we go into post-doc and really going in on some people, did you enjoy the documentary?
I did. It was really well thought out. I definitely appreciated the viewpoints that were taken from it, and I think it came out at a really good time as well. Especially because we are a little bit past the free Britney moment. It's obviously still going on because she is not free from the conservatorship, but it's more at the point where Britney is still pushing for these things. It's not just a Hail Mary anymore. Like, this is an ongoing thing. And I think it also, after the Me Too movement, it sheds a lot of light about what happened in the early 2000s.
I loved it too. Like, when I started watching and I was taking notes for this, I was instantly hooked because I couldn't believe some of the things I was seeing, which then goes into our next assessment of this documentary, the posting on people need to have some statements out there. And let's just start with the guy who came out with one as of today before we recorded, JT, Justin Timberlake. So, as all celebrities do when they mess up or get peer pressured and bullied, he went on his Instagram and he said he's seen all of the tags, messages, comments, and then he wanted to apologize to Britney Spears and Janet Jackson because the Super Bowl just happened, so everyone brings up that infamous moment and how he was sorry for that. But then he goes on to say the industry is flawed. It sets men, especially white men, up for success. It's designed this way. As a man in a privileged position, I have to be vocal about this. So, one, were you surprised that the social media bullying helped JT have an apology? Were you surprised that he actually did it? Or
I wasn't surprised that he actually did it, just because he has faced a lot of backlash over the past few years. So it was a very, let's go to my publicist. How can I just make this not disappear, but like, how can I appease everyone? And it's just holding people accountable, because it's not just him obviously being held accountable, but I feel like the apology is just a little too late at this point. He's obviously an adult, he's established, he's very successful, but he could have apologized several years ago.
Yeah.
And I can understand when everything was first going down. He's a young kid, he's being pressured by all these adults to make these choices and say these things to further his career. I can understand that to a point. But you also have to think, like, as a man, like, what are you doing to these women? Like, you are just furthering these stigmas. And I don't think that's acceptable.
Oh, you were a lot nicer to JT than I thought you would. So I'll be the mean one. So this apology, I don't care for it whatsoever. I think it's garbage, trash. Anything you can name that's bad, I think it's bad. Because, like you said, he was a child back then. But he wasn't a child in 2008. Mm-mm. Wasn't a child in 2010. Wasn't a child in 1999. He could have been apologized for his actions if he thought they were wrong at those times, but he didn't. The only reason he apologized is because all of his social media got flooded, and I'm pretty sure his wife's got flooded too, telling her that, hey, you need to get your husband to apologize. This is bad, blah, blah, blah. And for me, I don't like those hollow apologies, because you wouldn't have apologized if that section wasn't in the documentary. Mm-hmm. If no one saw that, you would have been carrying on your life. You wouldn't have cared. You wouldn't have been coming out saying, oh, the industry's built for blah, blah, blah. Like, you're only saying this because you got bullied. Point blank, simple. You got bullied by the internet people, and now you apologize, and some people are like, oh, this is great, but he's only doing it because he wants to show that he apologized. Like you said, his publicist said, hey, you got to do this. Mm-hmm. This is bad look. This is bad for business.
Especially after he already cheated on his wife 2 years ago, a year ago.
Yeah. So his apology was trash. I personally would have maybe felt better about it if he didn't post something on Instagram that, like, some article from, I guess because it was Britney Spears, CNN came out saying that he personally reached out to her, like had a phone conversation. I would have rather taken that than some Instagram post, because that's not doing anything for me. The other one who really needs to come out before we get to the main person, Diane Sawyer, as a established woman then and now, and I saw The View and them are saying she needs to apologize too. and hopefully she reaches out to Britney. That was terrible. That interview, asking all that stuff, like, you should know as a woman how hard it is to get to a top of a profession. And for you on national TV just to tear probably one of the top women in any profession on earth at that time just down to shreds and making her cry for no benefit for you whatsoever, that was bad. And she needs to go apologize to her too. And
it was disgusting. Like, it wasn't just bad, it was disgusting to watch.
And then that governor's wife, don't know if she's still alive. That kind of looks bad. Don't know if, I doubt he's in office right now, but I don't know. There's no term limit. But she needs to go reach out. Jay Leno, that was bad. He needs to go say something. And it's crazy how all these people are saying, they were saying those things now, and you would think nothing of it, but you brought up in the Me Too movement, and we're also in the midst of cancel culture.
Yes.
If Justin Timberlake would have said the things he said now, there would be no Justin Timberlake.
Absolutely not. It would have not been allowed to fly at all.
He would have been canceled and his career would have been done. Jay Leno, if he would have said that stuff, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're talking about a 17-year-old girl like that. NBC or whichever station he was on at the time would have canceled his talk show.
Correct.
Diane Sawyer would have been fired. I forget the one guy who asked about her virginity and breasts, he would have been canned. And it's crazy how it's changed from, this wasn't just like 50 years ago. This was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's changed so much. So I know a lot of people aren't really fans of cancel culture because they feel like we don't give people chances. But I mean, could you imagine if, let's say, if Ariana Grande went through this like right now, like the same things, and her and Miley and stuff, they went through things as well, but I don't know if anyone's went through as much as Britney Spears did. I don't think you could do that to someone now. I couldn't imagine Miley or Ariana Grande talking to a big Anderson Cooper on CNN, and they're like, oh, are either of you two still virgins, or have you had any work done? He would be unemployed. So I couldn't see that happening now, and it's sad that she had to go through it, and we're still learning from that as a society.
Correct. And people are still so surprised by it, but you also have to remember that when this was happening, you were picking up those tabloids, you were reading them, I was reading them, and as a young girl, like, reading it, I absolutely was like, oh, the media feels this way about this girl, like, of course I'm going to try to view it as this way. And it wasn't until a few years later that I actually started to think about, like, I was still a fan, but you're just so easily impressionable, and you're like, yeah, like, this is bad, she shouldn't be dressing like this, and then you're like, why can't she dress like this? Why is this considered slutty? Why are we only talking about her virginity and not how well she can perform, how she's outsold numerous superstars, like how she's performed on the VMAs and how she's created such an iconic culture? That wasn't important.
No, and those weren't the questions and praise being heaped on her. They were the other stuff. And also, too, as you brought up about mental health, and mental health taken more seriously now than it was then. The fact that so many talk show hosts back then were making fun of her mental breakdown and things like that, and cracking jokes, how she's going to the loony bin, blah, blah, this. And then you say, like, as older adults now in the media, like, oh, I can't believe this was happening. Why didn't anyone say anything? I was like, well, you guys were there back then.
You guys could have said something.
No one did. It was okay back then. So I also don't like how everyone's blaming other people for not saying anything when they could have said something as well back then. But that was the norms. And her mental breakdown shouldn't have been on freaking CNN and top news, and people using it to, oh, does she need to lose her kids? And they also brought up the party that she went to with Paris Hilton.
Yep.
And Paris Hilton also talked about in the thing how she knows what it's like to be scrutinized and things like that. And
this was the same ish time as Lindsay Lohan, because it was always Paris Hilton, Britney Spears, and Lindsay Lohan.
That's someone who needs to get theirs next.
Yeah, they
Lindsay
were
Lohan.
villainized. They were America's sweethearts. Britney and Lindsay both came from Disney, so they were supposed to be wholesome. And all of a sudden, they're whores. They're not America's sweethearts. They are not talented. It's about if they've had work done or what their mental health is like or their addiction issues. All of that.
Yeah, Lindsay needs hers. Hers next. And the biggest, I don't even know if I could just say Jamie in this, but the whole Spears clan, mom, dad, sister, brother.
Yep.
I have an issue with all of them. Well, obviously the dad, because he's in charge of this, and he shouldn't be. And your daughter's almost 50. Like, come on now. And the mom, who was all in from the beginning, taking her to the recitals and practices and things like that, and she's just been silent during this whole thing. And the sister, Jamie Lynn, who you're her little sister, and you haven't really said a word, and you should know what your sister went through, because obviously you were around. Hell, you had your show canceled on Nickelodeon because you had a baby. So you should, if that's...
Well, and she, like, her parents threatened Jamie more so than Lynn. Jamie threatened to take Jamie Lynn to, what was it, a nunnery?
Yeah.
And just hide her away until she had this baby.
Zoe?
That was going to be what it was. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. But Lynn, apparently, according to her book, was like, oh, no, this can't happen. We're not going to handle it like this. And she was the savior.
Yeah. Which is wild because, obviously, side note, Zoe 101 was a good show back in the day. And for it to be canceled abruptly like that because of that situation, it was what it was. Then her brother, they had it showed him with an interview that he had. It wasn't with the New York Times, but an interview that was recorded in the past about the situation and him not really taking it that too serious. And then her current boyfriend, he is on my list too. Now he's speaking up saying,
Sam.
I don't respect Britney's dad and all of that. And I had to look up how long they've been together because I'm like, oh, maybe they just...
It's been a few years.
I only thought, I was like, oh, maybe it's been a couple months. That's why he's speaking up.
From the Glory album.
But it's been a couple years, and I also was like, so where the hell have you been? If it's been for a couple of years, it's not like she just stopped in 2009, started again in 19, had it from 2009 to 2020. That's over 10 years.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories, too, about her boyfriend Sam being her handler. I don't know if you've, like, read into those or not, but a lot of it is, like, he's her handler. That's why he's put in as, like, being in a relationship with her. He's the one who films all of her Instagram videos and why it kind of looks like, and this is just what's on the internet, like a hostage situation with the way he's filming it. So yeah, that's an interesting conspiracy theory that's out there too.
Yeah, well, he's trash. So he's trash, dad's trash, mom's trash, Jamie's trash.
Managers have been trash.
Managers trash.
A restraining order on one of them, and he still keeps resurfacing every few years, like a bad pimple that won't go away. The attorney's trash. There was one good attorney in the doc, and then they didn't even let him be on the case. That pissed me off. And I just don't like the fact that all these people are coming out saying, oh, free Britney, the family, oh yeah, needs to change. You've been with Britney Spears more than any of the fans, and you've not said a word, and the only reason you're saying a word is because you guys are getting publicly shamed by this documentary and Twitter. And I watched to the end. I watched the whole thing in the credits, how they tried to reach out to the family. None of them commented. And they're not even sure if Britney Spears got the request.
I mean, she didn't get the request.
There's no way.
The dad went, got the mail, saw it, ripped it up, told Britney it was something. No, she didn't get it. So that really irritated me. That New York Times, they did whatever they could to reach out to the family. And if the family isn't getting mad because they're getting publicly shamed, then they had a platform to say what they want. And they all declined. And that was really all I really needed to see on that. And anyone else who it really, this documentary, besides her individually, really hit the nail on the head of the double standards in media and superstardom that women deal with, and how obviously the key thing that everyone says from the 70s to now, sex sells, and sex does sell, sexuality sells. But if you're not the one in control of that sexuality, a la a manager or a father, then it's a problem. And if the artist or nowadays Instagram model, if they're the ones fully doing it on their own, it's a problem. And then you get slut shamed.
Right.
And that is...
because you can't own your own sexuality. You can't have control over your own body.
No. And with Britney's case, it had to be, weird to say, it had to be owned by her dad. And
yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah, and her managers, because they were the ones, and it's like, they never asked the managers or the clothes people who were making the stuff for, like, hey, don't you feel this look? Like, they always just directed it at her. And there's also a scene in there where the age-old thing, where she was talking about she knows what she wants and stuff like that. I think someone in the castmates called her a bitch or something. And it's the age-old thing where a girl stands up for herself. In the music world especially, she's a bitch. But if a guy does it, he's the man.
He's charged.
So that was the really overarching thing. So now we're in 2021, do you even see this conservatorship ending with Britney?
No. I think it'll take a very long time for it to actually go away. And I don't think that she's going to perform until then. Like, she has openly said she will not perform until it's done or release a new album. And I think that's heartbreaking, not just for the fans, but also for her, because she is a very creative person. If you've seen any of her other documentaries, granted they're from different perspectives, but at the end of the day, all she wants to do is perform. All she wants to do is work. And she can't, because she has no control over that. She can't do the things that she wants. She can't show the world that she can actually sing. She's one hell of a performer. She's so talented, and she can't do this because of the control and because of all of the limitation.
I don't know how the succession line goes, but if something were to happen to her dad, like if he passes away, who's in charge of her? Is it the mom now?
At one point, it went to Jamie Lynn during the summer.
God, no.
Like,
the sister?
She briefly had control. And I don't know how permanent that would be, because all Britney wants is for a different set of lawyers to be in charge.
Yeah.
She's not even like really protesting the conservatorship. It's her dad and her family being in control.
Yeah. It's something definitely going to be in the news. I mean, if she's 40 something now, you would think her dad is around 80.
Well, and he's had some health problems.
Yeah. So if something were to happen to him, that'd be the biggest thing. If he dies of natural causes, who's in charge of Britney now? Does end? There's never been a case like this in the history of ever that a conservatorship has been this extended this long. We're definitely have to wait and see. Chelsea, you did it.
I did.
First episode there. Do you have any shout outs or anything you want to get out?
No. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right.
I'm not that cool to have shout outs.
Oh, nobody? Don't want to shout your mom or anything like that?
Thanks, Joan. Thanks for buying me my first Britney Spears CD.
There you
taking
go.
me to her concert for my 21st birthday.
See, there's a shout out.
There we go.
So, as always, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C Podcast. Thank you, Chelsea, for finally coming on. And now I'm just going to ask, because everyone else is going to ask, will you be back?
Sure. We can talk about Lindsay Lohan next.
Guys, we finally have Chelsea Heppert being on the L7C Podcast, hopefully on a frequent basis, maybe once a month, but she's finally here, guys. We got her. And with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to L7C Podcast. Make sure to like, rate, comment, subscribe, and you guys take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C Podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.